Hey, my name's Jonathan, and I'm a veteran.
Hi, my name is Daryl, and I'm a veteran.
My name is Chad, and I'm a veteran.
Hey, I'm Travis. I'm an Air Force veteran.
Hi, my name's Ashley, and I'm a veteran.
Hello, happy Sunday, everybody. You're watching Conversations with a Vet, and I'm Carol Lee. So I have a wonderful guest waiting in the wings, but before we get to him, I do want to talk a little bit about some things that are happening here coming up pretty quick. So we've got herostock.org. So Herostock 2024, it's going to be in Ashland, Nebraska, September 13th and 14th. That's going to be on County Drive Golf Course. So if you're interested in seeing a lot of veteran artists, having some good veteran camaraderie, and you're in that area, go out to herostock.org and reserve some seats. Also, we have coming up September 11th here in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. Minutes Wisely is doing their inaugural golf fundraiser at the Cedar Crest Golf Course. That again is September 11th. You can go to minuteswisely.org and check that out if you're interested and you like to golf or just again want to have some fun time. And then on November 8th through the 10th, Mind Over Land, and you can go to mindoverland.org. So the 8th through the 10th, that's Veterans Day weekend. They are having their second annual camp out, if you will. And that's going to be in the Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina, and it is open to everybody. It is free to go. You do have to pay for your food, but they will do a couple of off-roading trips if you're interested and you've got a vehicle that can do it. They've got, I think, 4 or 5 trails that are really easy, and then one that's a little bit harder. So, but some great fun. So, want to say hello to the people out in the comments. So, Jason, thank you as always for being here. Thomas Klein, welcome. Glad to have you with us today. So, okay, so my guest that is sitting out in the wings, his name is Dwayne Kilbourne, and he is a Marine veteran. So please, everybody out there in the chats, give him a warm welcome. How are you?
Very well. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing great. It's wonderful to see you face to face, so to speak, right?
Indeed. Love technology.
I know. It's wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful. So are you a golfer?
I used to be a little bit into it. I should have taken more advantage of golfing back in the day. I have 2 uncles. One was a pro, kind of semi-pro. He's on the tour, amateur tour, I think, early on.
Nice.
And then he kind of did all the things at the country club as a pro. And I had another uncle who, when he was married, they had a 9-hole golf course in the family. So I had access.
Wow. Okay.
I used a little bit, but not enough. So, yes.
That's all right. That's excellent. And have you ever heard of Mind Over Land?
Vaguely. I'm not as familiar. I know there's a lot of different the different programs and whatnot there, but I'm not that specifically for that.
They do 6 trips a year,
Okay.
Generally on the East Coast. Primarily, but they have done some kind of a little farther west and Midwest. And they'll take those trips is strictly for veterans, and they pay for their gas and their food, and they bring their own vehicles and they go off-roading. And some of these trips are like over 400 miles long.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's quite a trip.
It is. It's really a great thing that they do. And so I'm excited because again, this is their second annual trip where everybody's invited to the Blue Ridge Mountains there in North Carolina over Veterans Day weekend. And it's always great fun. I went last year, and they had probably close to 150 veterans there. And then myself and several other supporters of veterans and their sponsors. Angry Sarge, welcome. Sorry we missed you in Knoxville. So yeah, so lots of fun, absolutely lots of fun. So if you ever get the chance, you can go out there, take a look, mindoverland.org. So it's a lot of fun. Great people, absolutely great people, run by veterans and for veterans. So let me start with the question that I always ask all of my guests. You ready?
Okay. Yes.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about your childhood.
My childhood?
Huh? Didn't
Well,
expect.
I was an only child, so I have a lot of cousins, and I have some half siblings, but only one of the half siblings, my brother, when I was younger, living in the South for a brief stint in time, Georgia, and then moving from Georgia to Florida, and eventually landing in Michigan, where I spent the bulk of my life thus far. I am back in Georgia now, but I was spent all the time from down south Florida, and then, like I said, all up into Michigan. So I spent 27 years there. Did all my elementary school, middle school, high school. Of course, all the college, undergrad, and grad up there as well. So,
And
I'm very fortunate to have a good family. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, did you do that all the college, etc., before you went into the military, or was
Well, it's a combination. So I was met my mom and my stepfather when I was just about ready to, I think basically through halfway to sixth grade. And then I moved up north a little bit, about 20 miles into the Clio area. So if you know Frankenmuth, Michigan, for example, that's north of Flint. So let's say 20 miles north of Flint. And I was there and completed my middle school and high school there, which was good. But the military experience, I was in college already when I had my best buddy is like, hey, we need some people to go down to the recruiting station. And I was like, well, I'm already in college and I'm busy. So I started my bachelor degree program. I'd taken a couple classes at the college when I was in high school, and then continued it on after high school. And then I jumped into the reserves. So,
okay.
so
And
kind of split there.
So when you told your parents, now granted you're in college, but when you told your parents you were going to go into the military, what was the reaction?
Well, my mom was a little surprised. I was the only one of my cousins and immediate family, extended family that had joined, was going to join the military. My stepfather, he passed away just about a week or so, about 8 days after my high school graduation.
Oh, wow.
But he had been in the Marine Corps during the Eisenhower era, and I believe he spent some time at Camp David. I'm not sure, presidential security, that kind of thing, as I recall it. So when that happened, I was familiar with that to an extent. And my father, who lives in Florida still, he was in the Army, but wasn't called into action per se during his time overseas. So I was familiar with the military. Kind of unexpected. It wasn't like this long romance where I was going to, it was a 4-year plan. So she was a little surprised. I kind of got, in touch with Recruiter, but I was only a child, so she was a little surprised, but she was supportive. She's always been very patriotic as well. So supportive, but surprised.
Right. And then the Marine Corps specifically. So you chose that because that's where your buddies were going?
Yeah. So it's back in the day, it seemed, well, my day, which is not too long ago, back in the 90s, the recruiting efforts seemed to be flourishing if you were to go to the local mall, right? The malls were a place that you could gather a bunch of people, prospects, and recruit them into any military branch. I had a buddy of mine from high school. He went in active duty, got out of boot camp, did a couple of things, and then I think was in between schools so he could extend out his leave. So he helped the recruiters out for a little bit of time to spend some time at home. And I think every time he was going up to the mall or wherever else they sent him, he wasn't sending back enough leads, so they kind of got on him a little bit. So if the recruiter's not looking right now and not watching, they were asking him to, yeah, we need some bodies in here. So I was like, I'm in college, so I already had a plan in place.
Right.
He's like, look, I just need you to go talk to the recruiter. They're getting on my back. So I got to the recruiting station, and then they had a perfect plan in place for me, a special, customized, whatever it takes, right? It's always and I get it. They wanted some people into the military. They offered me the opportunity because I was in college to join the reserves, and because I had college already lined up, I could take the summers because the Marine Corps has the longest boot camp. Go to boot camp the first summer, then report to the unit, do the reserve duty at that time, and then go back the next summer for some additional training. So I did 3 summers of additional training. Went out West Coast. So I'm a Hollywood Marine because half of Michigan goes west and half go east. And I
think that's just crazy, but it is what it is. So let me ask you this, because I always like to hear the different stories from boot camp and or basic training. So do you have any stories that you can recall from boot camp?
Well, some, I mean, all the little
Put me on the spot here.
Yeah, no, there are a few things. The first thing that I had to adjust myself to, I was pretty good about. Thankfully, I was raised in a great family, right? I had my mom was fantastic. I had good structure and good people who were supportive. So I didn't have as much of a challenge on the discipline side, and I was very fortunate to do well in school. So if you taught me something, I could absorb it pretty quickly and then kind of regurgitate that and repeat it successfully more times than not. And I understand accountability pretty well. So what I had to get my body and mind wrapped around was that when the person next to me didn't do the same thing, right? My brain's like, okay, well, I aced the test. Why am I getting in trouble? And as well, of course, you're in a group setting. I understood teamwork, but in a combat theater, you the person next to you, you could do everything right and they could do something wrong, and you're both held accountable for that action. So it took me not too long, but a little bit of time to kind of lock in on that. And then, we did have the Marine Corps is fun. They have a 1 week is, all the great elements of it. And I enjoyed it looking back, and I'd do it again. But there's a week that it's like team week. And in San Diego, they would send some of us up to Camp Pendleton to help in the landscaping or whatever. They kind of had they would kind of still do the disciplinary stuff at night, but you would help out during the day, I guess. Mm-hmm. And we, one morning, they had extra time, so they never let extra time go to waste. And we had to carry the footlockers downstairs, stack them up, and then you take them back upstairs and back. Now these are light ones because we didn't have all of our stuff with us. Eventually, it's time for us to go to the chow hall to do what we had to do there. And some of them were left behind to take all the footlockers back upstairs. Well, they didn't put them back in the right spot. So when I got done for the day, I could not find my footlocker. And you only have a certain amount of time to shave and shower. So so yeah, I got in trouble. I had, I didn't. They realized I didn't shave until like the very last second. I think I found an extra razor or something, a spare one someone had, and used that. So yeah, that was kind of the experience. And then and there was one other time they had a person who pulled a prank on somebody. We almost got all in trouble. But
what was the prank?
I don't know if someone took one for the team, but thankfully someone did take one for the team, or they fessed up. They before we went to PT, they decided to put some icy hot in the jock strap of somebody, and we almost all got in trouble there. But thankfully, either someone again took the blame, or the person who actually did the deed fessed up, because that person had quite the experience that afternoon, and thankfully we didn't have to all do that. So
oh my gosh,
good times.
Right. And so with basic or boot camp in this instance,
Sure.
So how easy was it physically for you to integrate?
Physical training was pretty good. I was not the fastest. I wasn't a slow runner, but I was not the fastest runner. You had some people that's all they did, cross country or track or something. I was very athletic growing up, and again, I could absorb knowledge pretty well. But I didn't practice for years and years to know everything inside and out. But physically, it was pretty good. I didn't have any complaints that summer. I think it sprinkled one afternoon, and that was about it. So we didn't have to deal with that part of the elements, but it was definitely warm, and any other crucible too. So that's like a 52-hour, 54-hour event across a number of miles with limited food. So that tested us a little bit as well, but no complaints. It was good time looking back.
That's excellent. And then as you were, you had 13 weeks, I believe. Is that right? Does that sound
Yes.
right? Okay.
Right.
And they have all sorts of different trainings that they do, of course, rifle and rappelling and the gas chamber. What were your thoughts on those?
Well, gas chamber is a little different. Unfortunately, I didn't have to ever deal with something like that before. And but obviously, it was important to understand the basics of that in case you ever got put in that situation. Rifle, I was familiar, but I wasn't like the person who was hunting every weekend, which was kind of, I think, advantage to me and some others, because if you had some bad habits, some people had a few bad habits, and certainly they had to unbreak those habits, or they would, I guess the drill instructors would unbreak them for you. But yeah, so all that was pretty good. And in basic training, you just had the one weapon you had to worry about. So you kind of learned that pretty quickly. You did your own laundry the old-fashioned way. Out west, we do that, on the wash rack, and you do all the little things. Yes. So, it's always a back and forth. I did go to one, I admit, as a Hollywood Marine. They utilize us for one afternoon or one evening to help recruit and promote the Marine Corps by going to a baseball game if it's in season. So I did go to one baseball game, didn't overindulge because we knew the next day we would be probably have some heavy physical training. So the people that were wanting to eat a couple candy bars, learned the hard way the next morning. But we didn't have a laundry recruit. So in Paris Island, my understanding is you put everything in a laundry bag, and then someone would go wash it in the washing at the washing machines. We actually on Sundays would go out to the wash rack after devotional or whatever else, and take care of the wash rack take care of the wash on the wash rack with a scrub brush and everything like that. So,
wow.
So that was kind of not that it was testing us, but it was definitely something different from at home. So.
Right. Well, at least if the electricity goes out, how you wash your clothes.
Well, I'm the expert. And we got to do the boots. After I got done with boot camp, and about within a year or so after, they kind of transitioned away from the black boots into the suede boots, and the camis were suddenly pre-creased, and I understood why. But boot camp, I had to press or increase the camis and do all the things that you would typically have to do that you don't no longer have to with most of the stuff.
And so you said you were athletic as a kid. So were you in sports?
I was. I did a little bit. I was in wrestling in middle school, for example. I didn't continue that in high school. I enjoyed it, but I was busy with other things. Tried out for basketball. Got close, but I always enjoyed basketball. It didn't work out too well. There's some really good people on the basketball team. And then I did. We played tennis. I was varsity tennis, chess, although it's not quite what you think of. And I did marching band for a season before I stopped doing band. So,
Nice.
but I enjoyed all the sports. I played trumpet.
Okay.
From late elementary school all the way through ninth grade, essentially. And I played at the Flint Institute of Music, Flint Institute of Music as well. When I was getting some lessons there from one of the folks, the instructors who moved there, I also jumped on some of the orchestras and bands there before I kind of exited my music career, or lack thereof.
Nice. And so you get done, and now explain how it works kind of in detail, if you don't mind, for those who are going into the reserves for the Marine Corps. So you get through the crucible, you get your EGA, right?
Yes.
And then do you still go to, what was your MOS?
So I was an administrative clerk, but I was the only administrative clerk to the infantry, the line platoon or the line company. So I was in Michigan. We had 3 companies plus a headquarters element company, and Ohio had the weapons company. So those were the ones nearest me, and they gave me an administrative billet, an 0151, and I did more units. So anytime people had to update their contact information, of course, when we got deployed, I did all that legwork with regard, and of course, the active duties there to help along the way. But that was my primary MOS. So the way it works, it depends on what you're considered. If you're a 92-day or a split Marine at the time, I'm not sure now, but at the time, you would, because you're assigned, you're essentially going to go back to college, and you have a college start date for the fall. So I kind of was lucky in one sense that when I got to boot camp, I didn't sit in what was considered receiving for a while, right? I was kind of like fast tracked to make sure I was picked up at the next company, because I had to be back in time, or else, there's no point. I'd miss college. So that was the promise on the contract. So I would get there a couple of days receiving, get into my company, hotel company, and do the training. Get done, get the EGA, get the come back off and go back down to San Diego, do the actual, because we used to get it at the end of the crucible, and then come back down and do graduation, family day and whatnot, and then fly out. Because I was a 92-day reservist, I would not go straight to my MOS school. Of course, a lot of the guys who might be, let's say, infantry would possibly go on leave and come back, but a lot of them would go straight into School of Infantry. And if they didn't have slots available, or they're waiting, they'd be sitting and receiving over and over again. So I went back. I had to report back the following Monday to the reserve unit, and I checked in there. And because I was 92-day reservist, that meant my actual admin school didn't happen until the following summer. So I actually got on the job training, for the other 9 months, 8 months, 9 months, and then went to Camp Lejeune, flew into Jacksonville, and that's, I think, a 6-week course. So once that happened, there still was plenty of time before I went back to school, but for whatever reason, I guess that's contractually the way it is. Up next for me would have been Marine combat training, the shortened version of the infantry, more advanced infantry training, both infantry training battalion, School of Infantry. So if you're an 0311 or 03 anything, you would have all those extra in the full training there. Yes. And I had the shortened version, like the 17 or 20-day, 17 training days, I think it was, of additional training in the field and weapon systems. But even though after 6 months or 6 weeks, of admin school at Camp Johnsonoff, which is at Camp Lejeune, I still had time before my college picked back up to go right next door to Camp Geiger for Marine combat training. However, that's not what was scheduled. So I went back to my unit, again, a full cycle of the year. And then the third summer, I should say, over to back to Jacksonville, checked in over at Camp Geiger for School of Infantry's Marine combat training. So it's shortened, kind of abbreviated, because every Marine's a Marine, rifleman first, so right. You have to get some additional training, and we got a chance to check out some additional weapon systems that we could possibly come across, some basic things that we needed to know, some more things on NBC, for nuclear biological weapon type of things, and some field training. So, and at that point, then I was a full-fledged, everything was good,
right,
at that point in time.
And so, was it similar to MCT?
And yeah, MCT is what I did.
Is
17
what you went through?
17 days. Yeah. So that happens. You all would go to the same base, but those who are infantry MOSs, O3s, would go to the longer version. And so they go to a similar receiving, and they go to one side, and then MCT would go over here
Right.
for those who are not infantry MOS Marines.
So you didn't have any holding time once you.
No, that's the thing on all three, really. When I arrived at Camp Johnson, it was pretty quick and easy. I think I had like an extra 1 or 2 field days. We had to help move one of the administrative. I don't know if it's a sergeant major or what. They're moving one building to another to do some renovations, so we helped with that for a day, which is common within receiving. They just need working parties, people
Right.
to
Right.
help move things around. So I had just a hint of that, and they got picked up right away. So I'm very fortunate, I guess, that I didn't have to sit around, because sometimes you'd hear people would be waiting a long amount of time before they got picked up into their next whatever it was. So
Yeah.
I didn't have all
Sometimes
that
over a month.
Yes, I didn't. I had a couple of days, so I was very, very glad to get right into the training, and that also allowed you, in case you had some problems, you could have the buffer at the end.
Which is good.
Yes.
And then you went back from there. You went back to Michigan.
Yes, to the unit. Yes, I went back to my Charlie Company, 1st Battalion, 24th Marines, 4th Marine Division. Our slogan or motto is "Terror from the North." So, we'd go to Camp Grayling and a couple of Fort Custer. Would be so Kalamazoo. We went to Toledo one time for some training out in like urban warfare, or more so for patrolling out in an urban environment. That was unique in that we went down there. It just happened at a time when they had a white supremacy rally or parade or something going on. So people thought we were coming in there to help be the muscle to make sure nothing bad happened. We're just there to help train in these abandoned buildings. So yes, that was a little different, but so we did that kind of training a lot. And we had some cold weather training and whatnot, especially during the winter months when the snow.
There in Michigan. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I understand that. It can be a whole different thing. But interestingly enough, right? I mean, the terrain is just so different where you may go.
Right.
So, I mean, desert has been the thing for now. How long?
Well, that was a unique thing too, is that when I was wrapping up, not to jump forward for you, but when I was wrapping up, so I did, the 3 summers, and then one of the companies had went to the Horn of Africa, to Djibouti, and we had, they had that. So they were out of Grand Rapids, Michigan, Alpha Company. So you kind of had Bravo and Charlie Company kind of sitting out there in the wings waiting. And of course, weapons were later kind of subdivided and have half and half to both line companies when we went overseas. So, we did all that sort of training, but we were more so cold weather. It felt like, definitely during the winter, but I was wrapping up my bachelor degree in business administration with a focus on marketing and a minor in e-business. And then he got the call that we're going to get activated to go overseas right before. There's a buildup obviously happening in Kuwait and whatnot, but the war hadn't kicked off. We actually got there, when right before that actually happened. But we sat in Lansing. I never had to deal with the receiving at any of the places and working parties too heavily. But when we got activated, mobilized, got the orders, and reported for I think 17 straight days back and forth to Lansing before our plane and all the other logistical elements were kind of at least put in place. So we had that, and then went overseas. We got some refueling in Germany, and that's when we realized that the 48-hour warning that President Bush had kind of put down there for Saddam and his generals and whatnot had just taken place mid-flight at some point. So we arrived in Kuwait probably, I would say, 16, 17 hours before the official kickoff, give or take. Maybe a little bit more, maybe 30 hours at the most.
Okay. And I always ask this too, because I'm always curious, right? Because I've never been outside the US. But what was it like for you to step off the plane and see that kind of terrain?
Yeah, it was different because we've been training. This was before you have the workups that would happen. All the cycles after that. Military is great. Our military is the best in the world, so we're constantly learning and we're always adapting to it. So for us, we were well prepared. We had all the intel of who the bad guys were. Certain this uniform, that vehicle, whatever. But you didn't have the supply lines in place yet. You had a little bit of infrastructure, but not too much. So that was the challenge early on. And you arrive into the desert and you get kind of checked in. You get scanned that you are legitimately who you say you were. They scan your card and whatever else and make sure you're good. And then you
Right.
kind of try to figure out, they're at one tent city, so to speak, and then you're kind of settling in. But it was, and again, that's where the supply line adaptation was kind of happening. Our Humvees and some of our Connex boxes and other supplies were still back waiting for the big bird to fly out of Selfridge. So now our machine gunners are there without some of the machine guns, and they get them later on. As an admin guy, my weapon's is a M16. So we had, I went to the armor and checked or gave mine back in, got a Beretta, did a few things like that. So you're adapting to the situation. And
Giving
then
them
once
something to utilize in the process.
right, because machine gunners not going to just carry a pistol on them on the front line per se, or nearby. So we kind of made sure we had the right weapons that were available to us in the right spots. And then once you get kind of figured out and you're waiting to get in country and the war hasn't happened yet, hasn't officially kicked off, as it did, then you have like some nights every hour on the hour we're getting called to the bunker because of stray Scud missiles, heading in a certain direction. Or so you have at that point you're like, you might as well just stay, fully geared up every hour because it's on the hour. It's just for them to try to break your sleeping pattern and convenience, for lack of better, reason.
And so was it a culture shock though, stepping off that plane?
It was, it's different. You're certain, granted, there's warm days in Michigan, but then you're looking at it. You have some people that, that are, the encamped areas, the tent cities, as we call them, or whatever else, were, pretty much well, guarded and regulated, whatever else. So you saw a lot of the same type of people, military uniforms, etc. But the wildlife might be a little bit different. The climate now, it's really hot in the day, and it still was early spring, so it'd be really chilly at night. So you have to adjust the body accordingly. And then we had more of that as we went into Iraq as well. So
Okay. And did you eat the food?
well, they had some chow halls and for lack of a better term, chow halls, and they would have some food that was military rations of sorts, and then we would have our MREs, of course. But once we got into Iraq and we had, I think all but one night we had MREs. They had some of the cooks. Once we got kind of in areas where we kind of had these bases, we either kind of took over the area and kind of utilized for command and control. We ended up getting a meal from there, from our combat cooks. But then as it went from a wartime to a humanitarian, a lot of the corpsmen that happened to be with us and whatnot were kind of out there working with some of the villagers. And then I think once or twice, I ate goat, so I was able to have some of the local
cuisine.
yes, cuisine. Yes, the first time was I don't think we had much seasoning for that one, so that was a little different. The next time was a little bit more more prepped. But it was good. It was different, but it was definitely good.
Nice. And what was the reaction of the people there when you guys got there?
Well, there were people, especially as we were going on convoy. So we did what was known as like forward arming and refueling points. So we were not too far from the front line of the action, but as it as it pushed into Iraq, and you'd have whatever mode of transportation, air transportation, and of course your various air power weaponry that the, let's say, Marine Corps or Navy might be using, a Harrier jet, Cobras, whatever it might be, C-130s. So we'd have these areas. Think of it like you're on a freeway and you kind of have, I don't know the exact amount of space, but let's say a half mile. So instead of having all those aircraft going all the way back to Kuwait, they would land and we'd have all the supplies they need to get more ordnance, whatever it is, more fuel. So my company would be involved in security elements to make sure no one would poach in and cause a challenge to them. So we had that, and but after that we go from one spot to another spot, and there'd be some vehicle convoys, and you could tell, especially then as you go through a town, some elders, some that maybe bad actors, but those who certainly weren't going to flex the muscle in that moment in time. But you could see some facial expressions and body language that they weren't too thrilled. Others seemed very welcoming that we had arrived, and we're there to help them get to a better position, as we were looking to take care of our mission, to help our way of life and those who we work with and support across the world. So we had that. There are some spots, though, of course, you'd find young, especially young people out. They kind of figured out maybe the path that most convoys might take, and it'd be out in the middle of nowhere, and you're wondering where they came from, and they have no shoes on, no sandals, nothing, and they're probably hungry, and we try to do what we could, but we couldn't stop, right? Because we don't have to be ambushed. But you would have it where you were trying to figure out where they came from. Like, did they walk a mile? Did they walk 5 miles? But we were able to help the population out, I think, in a few ways, and the locals, especially as we moved to a humanitarian time. We were able to, our docs would be more involved, and we had some more, because you still were trying to get intel if there's something was going to go wrong. But again, we still had it was more supply line than it was we don't know who our enemy was. That would kind of come later, or at least it got more robust later on. How often, because my battalion went back in 2006, I did not. I was going to the inactive ready reserve, and they went to Fallujah, and they had a whole entire different experience. Supply lines were pretty much fortified, were there, but you didn't necessarily know who was good, who was bad. So that was kind of the difference. And they had workups, out in the deserts and different spots in the USA. So yeah, you're able to get with the locals, especially about let's say 40 days in. It seemed like that was kind of the timetable, and I'd like to think we were pretty helpful for those we encountered.
Yeah, with all of the scuds and such that were happening when you'd have to go into the bunkers. I mean, were you scared? What was going through your mind? Do you recall?
Well, I wouldn't call it control chaos, but not everyone knew what to expect, right? We have, especially on the reserve side, we're trained, right? We're trained, but if you go back a handful of years, pre 9/11, you had that gap of time where most people, even though it's all, you raise your hand and you swear to defend, right? And you do whatever it takes. It had been quite a while since we had circumstance where a good majority of the military was going to be put in a position where you might be in a pretty good risk, a good harm or whatnot. You might have to fire a weapon, right? So you have that. So when we're over there, some of the, Marines, or while they're highly trained, only a handful had been there from Desert Storm, right? Desert Shield, and what they might have done back then, what they were counted on might have been different too, because it wasn't this robust, long, enduring battle. So the unknown certainly was there. And, I was thankful because in Marine combat training, again, going back to that, I was trained like NBC, right? Your gas mask, you did that, but the whole, mop gear and all the different levels and such, we got training on it, but we weren't sitting there, repetitious on a daily basis. We were putting it on. The practice wasn't there. So I was fortunate that the NBC Marine was literally right next to me in the bunker as we were huddling down, and I think that out of an abundance of caution, whoever was in control of the circumstance, and maybe I'm sure they had more knowledge and information than we did in the bunker, but as they sound the siren, so to speak, the howl, everyone goes to the bunker, at certain points they would identify and mop level, whatever. And then, so that was almost like are you sure, and all that was kind of the chaos that came with it, not knowing. And, Scuds weren't coming they were close, but they didn't land near us, thankfully. And we had good protection with the Patriot batteries and whatnot nearby. But, I think one time they said like mop level 4, which is the whole thing. And you're like, you get done, you get out of the bunker and people are looking like that was unnecessary, but of course, hindsight or
right. And
everyone's
it's better to be
then.
prepared than not. Yeah.
That's where the chaos came about, I think, and just the usual stuff, adapting as on the go. So and then like I said, when it was starting to happen at night, you got to the point where I swear it was on the hour, every hour. I went from, being sort of comfortable in the tent city to, every hour I just kept an extra layer of clothes on. I'm like, I'm tired of taking all that off. I'm just going to sleep with my pack or whatever, day pack or a Kevlar or whatever else, have that right there on. I was tired of putting it on, taking it off, putting it on, taking it off. So and it saved time to get to the bunker, so you can get there a little quicker, just in case you really did have a situation. So.
And then your mom, so obviously she knows you're deployed. She knows where you're deployed. She's hearing the news. I mean, it was big news.
Sure.
I remember it. And I mean, oh my gosh. And of course, back then, well, this would have been, what year was it?
2003 when Iraq kicked off. So
cell phones. Yeah. So they had cell phones, but they weren't prevalent at all.
Right. We had, for us, at the time I was married, still in college, again, took the break from college, got everyone over there, you get settled in a little bit and then go into Iraq. And, but you weren't carrying a cell phone like you'd have here, and you're not changing out your, your data plan and your wireless plan to make phone calls while you're in the middle of a combat theater. So, there was one case where I was able to there's a couple of us that stumbled upon, I want to say it was CBS Miami, who they had one or two reporters entrenched with maybe special forces or, they didn't really say who they were with. You could kind of tell some people that weren't clean shaven, let's say. So they were doing whatever maybe the recon was or whatnot, and really great people. And the CBS folks had a satellite phone, and at that point in time, we were authorized to make a call. A couple of us could make a call. You're not telling where you're at, and I didn't have GPS coordinates. I was trying to send back anyways. I was just trying to say hello and let everyone know we're in good shape. So
yeah. And how was your mom with it, though? I mean, as a parent, I know how I am. I mean, I've got 2 Marines, and so so the oldest was deployed several times, and
well, that's the thing is that she was obviously a little nervous. Everyone, I think, would be, and unexpected, and again, first everyone has this preconceived idea of what maybe the reserves are, what they're expected to be, why are you going here, how it all works out. You go where the unit's tasked to go. You get orders and you go and you do the job that you're asked to do. Even when I was in Iraq, I wasn't doing a lot of admin stuff. That was kind of already on autopilot, but a few things, but not really. So you just, you got together and you took care of what the mission in front was. But in the meantime, I can imagine, we were not sitting back watching CNN, Fox, or any of the other news because we didn't have access to where we were at. we didn't have these hugely built up facilities at that time. So
Right.
we had a few that we came across, and Alcoot and an area near the Tigris, Three Rivers. So those kind of got built up a little bit, but not to the level that happened later as more and more infrastructure was brought in to help rebuild. So, it's not like they have a list of like, these are the cities that the unit's in. They're not broadcasting it to the world to know. So whatever's happening on the TV could be right where we're at, or it could be, 500 miles away. So
Exactly.
so that unknown certainly is a bit worrisome.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we all came back. We had some indirect fire. We had some rounds come towards us in some areas. A patrol that I was not on and a convoy I was not on saw some of that action. The indirect fire, I think we all got some of that action early on as well during the war component before it went to more humanitarian. So, but again, the family doesn't necessarily know that. Heck, even if I wrote a letter, by the time it got back, it wouldn't be
Somewhere
news.
else. So was that in where you saw indirect fire? Was that in Kuwait or in Afghanistan?
No,
Or
Iraq.
both?
Actually, yeah, no, Iraq. So I was actually in.
Or Iraq? Okay.
Yeah, you're good. The unique thing, like I said, we got in to the refueling of the FARP, and think of it like we landed, I want to say, a couple football fields away from an overpass. So if you take a half step before that, we had arrived in there. I'd flown into a spot, came back. I guess we went to the wrong spot again. Some of the miscommunication that happens early on. But when we all went in there to C-130, all of us on one, we call a stick, so one flight in. We landed, kind of got in place. The various O3, the line platoons would take different secure positions and whatnot. And on the embankment of the overpass, going up to it is where we kind of had our comms and some of our headquarter elements. So the first night I slept in Iraq, a full night, I slept in a sleeping bag on an angle on the hill of the overpass or nearby the overpass. And then, in a couple of days or whatever, I forget how many days later, there was some indirect fire. I couldn't tell you how far that was away. I think some of our folks or some of the positions took some shrapnel. I don't remember. None of us got injured to where they were evac'd or whatnot. But yeah, so that happened in Iraq, and again, we had all the alerts when we were in Kuwait. When we got into Iraq, we had, I think during the daytime, you'd have these groups that would come up to our security checkpoints, and they'd maybe be asking for food, or maybe they wanted to turn themselves in, and based on whatever the rules were of that day, the rules of engagement, what the process was, they were designated maybe to turn them away or get some information and do whatever. But I think some of those elements certainly were just testing the waters to see what was happening, maybe getting some range finders, getting some distancing measures, just in case they wanted to make some form of attack on that area. And like I said, that one night they got some indirect fire coming our way pretty quickly. But it was a quick attack, and thankfully everyone came out in one piece.
Always a positive.
Yes.
Absolutely. And when you got back, so how long were you there between Iraq?
Yeah, I was only over in that theater for I was there less than 90 days myself. When I was married, my ex-wife had some medical problems. I came back as my unit was going at that point. They were getting ready to go to Kuwait. We'd gone up to, like I said, 2 or 3 big spots. Humanitarian happened. We went from Al-Qut, and I headed back to Kuwait. And then from Kuwait, I flew back on commercial flight, Kuwait to Amsterdam with a stop at Bahrain. Actually, it went Kuwait to Bahrain, sat there for 25 hours, hopped on a flight to go to Amsterdam, which actually came back to Kuwait, where I started, stopped in Amsterdam for about 2 hours and flew from there to Detroit. The unit that was there, my unit, Charlie Company, went back to Kuwait within a handful of days, maybe no more than a week. they're back in Kuwait, as I recall, and just continued the rest of their time before they came back stateside, and everything was good. So we our unit had the Iraq element to it, whereas Bravo Company, I think, did more security measures, remaining in Kuwait the whole time. So I wasn't there as long as I was very thankful. I was there for the war and then for a portion of the humanitarian, let's say 72 or 80 days total.
Wow. And that's a lot, right? And then you come back. When did you just do one tour?
I did. So I was still on active duty when I got back. Stayed on active duty for 11 months. Then we went back to reserve status. Everyone got back on reserve status. We didn't have that next summer, the 2-week training that they always talk about for reservist or National Guard, because we'd already been overseas and deployed. And then I was going, I completed the bachelor degree, started and was nearing the end of my master's degree, MBA with a focus in marketing. And at the time I was still married, and she saw some medical problems, so it didn't really make me as worldwide deployable as they would call. Right. So I helped my unit deploy as a battalion. I went to the inactive ready reserve, and then and finished up my time there. So I got to one deployment. So yeah, that was the one time in Iraq that I got a chance to go and serve the country overseas. And then my unit went back in 2006, and but it was like I said, a whole battalion, totally different atmosphere in Fallujah, and
right.
And yeah, so I missed out on that one, which I actually feel very bad about, but also I'm fortunate that I didn't have to endure that battlefield,
Yeah, that was not fun from the stories I've heard.
No.
And so you come back. Did they provide you, they being the military,
Right,
the Department of Defense, whomever, did they provide you with any kind of transition help from military back to civilian life?
It is different. I know that some of the laws that are out there, they require you, like I was working at General Motors as well while I was also pursuing my degrees and also doing my reserve duties. So I wasn't having to race back to the civilian job right away. You have a certain amount of time under the various protections for those orders. But you're right, it is different. I think they've learned better since. We would have before and after, like right now, as I experience it, because I'm in the VFW, Veterans of Foreign Wars, and I'll participate in some of those activities, send-offs, returns, yellow ribbons on both sides, understanding what is needed to help them with the resources. And so that's all that we have. Before, it was like you had a couple lessons and you had a couple you have some resource information that was distributed beforehand, stuff that you need to do, filling out this paperwork before you go overseas, life insurance, whatever. Your VSOs would be there as well and supportive. And then at the end, coming off, here's what, you rate this, you rate that, just some basics, but nothing to the level that they're doing now. When I was in the inactive ready reserve, they also were trying to, before the honorable discharge, because in the Marine Corps or in the reserves, I was on a 6x2 contract. So I did 6.5 years at the unit, about a year and a half on the list per se. And they offered, it wasn't required, but they did offer if I wanted to do like a drill week. It wasn't a weekend, it was a 1-day thing, whereas all the resources put together. And I know they were trying to get people to sign back up to a full commitment again. They talked a little bit with me about OCS and some other things, but I was still married at the time. So that was something that wasn't in my, wasn't something that was available for me in my opinion, because of her situation at that moment. Of course, hindsight 2020,
right?
We got divorced about 9 months after that. So I would have been able to continue and look at that option, at least on the reserve side. because I love being a Marine. And I know once Marine, always Marine, but I enjoyed being with my guys, doing the things together. And I do feel bad I wasn't in Fallujah with them. And, and then, I'm not sure what that career element or the add-on secondary career would look like, because, I know eventually you have sequester and you have a couple other things. But I do see a lot better with the newer units, especially on the National Guard, Reserve. When they come back, they do have, some additional resources, like formalized.
Right. And I know, so both of my Marines
Mhm.
got out this year. So
Okay.
um, they do provide, they're doing much better. They're providing a lot more resources
They are.
and, simple things like, resume writing
Sure.
and, all those kinds of things. So definitely makes a difference, helps them, how to find a job. And
Right.
that leads me to my next question for you. So
Yeah.
with all of your skill set that you had and had obtained in the Marine Corps, how would you translate that to the civilian world?
Sure. I mean, some of the things, I was working with some computers and doing some of that work in various systems. So I had some of that knowledge and experience before and
Right.
after. So it kind of did work nicely. I certainly, there are some MOSs that are more friendly to the civilian world. And some, in my case, I enjoyed being an admin, and I knew a lot of the folks that were either in the Marines that were in supply or training or, operations or whatever. So I was kind of able to kind of get a taste of those areas while I was doing it. But I know a lot of them obviously didn't translate. I think on the reserve side, it's unique in that, if you're a reservist, you're like, hey, I live in this state. What do you have in my area? And in my case, I think I could be wrong, but I know that the Marines that I was familiar with as an admin guy, I'm admin. I'm going to a reserve infantry unit, and I didn't go to headquarters down in Detroit to do that training or to be part of that company. So I don't think there were any major Marine Corps units besides infantry in the area that I recall, at least. So you had a lot of that, which then for them translated maybe to law enforcement. Some were going for law enforcement, which really worked out well. Others, is just more of a pathway for them to help get some additional money for college.
Right.
But for me, I try to take as much as I can. I've applied a lot of it thereafter. I always was working with different programs on the computer, although they were different certainly than what I was doing. But it can be a challenge to translate. And I think even the bigger challenge for some happens to be what's the translation for, the resume looks different. It's a different language, right? Hey, I was admin. Okay, you can kind of figure that out. You think possibly, but an armor or your infantry, there's skills that you've acquired just purely through the military service that could be, useful in completely different career paths. But you just, some people don't, because they haven't walked in those boots, right? They don't know. Oh wow, that's leadership there. That's that's
Exactly
the
right.
accountability, and that's organizing, putting a plan together. Infantry guys, are the grunts. Yeah, people might want to poke fun at that, but it's not like we have some sharp individuals. Hey, we have to go from here to there. It's land navigation. We got to figure out the terrain. Here's what's the mission. Here's how we're going to get there. All the accountability along the way. All those things. And too often we forget that that you might have hundreds of thousands of dollars or a couple $1,000,000 worth of equipment at the responsibility of a young NCO.
That's right.
They might be 20 years old, and they're in charge of like a lot of money worth of stuff, that if they were to lose that, it might be a deadly situation, but they definitely would be in trouble for losing critical equipment. So all these things like that don't always translate, or some people forget about that when it comes to civilian job opportunities.
Yeah, I think you've made some very valid points there, because it does. Organization, management, leadership,
Okay.
mentoring. I'm sure that there was a lot of that happening. You know, as far as, hey, this is how you need to do something, mainly so that they wouldn't get burned.
Sure. Well, and the teamwork there too.
Yes.
At the end of the day, I could know everything. I could be the know all be all subject matter expert, and if I don't somehow give that information to the next person, then what happens if I'm no longer on the battlefield, either getting injured, something happens. If I don't pass that down, then the troop readiness is diminished significantly, and now you're talking about lives here. You might not accomplish the mission. Now there's so many things that come into play. So that mentorship, working together, and again the teamwork. You and I could be on the same squad. I could be the best athlete. I can run and carry 3,000 pounds. Everything is great, and if you might be the weak link in that moment. You make a noise. I'm not suddenly immune to that. So working together, and we know that teamwork and civilian job opportunities and whatnot, workplaces, it's important. It's not an I kind of game. It's good to have the skills,
Right. For sure.
but you also want to make sure other people have the tools to be successful.
Right. And then with that comes discipline.
Sure.
And the ability to follow orders and follow through, follow up. So there's, accountability, as you said, that's key, and taking responsibility for your actions or lack thereof. So I think that all of those are really good points for anybody who is going to be getting out of service anytime soon. That's important to look at, is how does your military time or military service translate into the civilian workforce? So you should be able nowadays, I think, that you'll be able to find people who can help you, the resources and what they're providing now when people transition back out, back into civilian life, is a lot more, obviously. And so to help them, I think that there's a lot of that help to help take their military experience and translate it into civilian work.
Yeah, it's gotten better. I want to say, and looking back, it's been, over 20 years, right? So 21 years since I was in a combat theater. So I guess I appreciate that experience. I appreciate the experience overall in uniform, not just combat.
Right.
But it's been 2 decades essentially,
Yeah.
or a good piece.
Hard
of
to
that.
believe. It seems like it was just yesterday.
It doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't feel. Well, it's like it wasn't yesterday, but it wasn't 2 decades. It wasn't.
Right.
And for me, it's like I want to say back then, as I recall, a lot of the active duty were trying to take the experience, whether it's correspondence, files, courses, and whatnot, the field training, the garrison training, the discipline, all the different components. And they were trying to find a way to, let's say when they got out, they're like, I want to go to college now. And that's what they wanted to do, or they felt that's what they had to do, whatever it was. They would take that and say, okay, how can I translate that even into credits towards my career, college, degree, I should say. And that seemed to be, even that was sort of challenging. But and that's just not that that's just a piece of paper, but that's just a pathway to say, okay, it's like translating one language to another, and how does that work? And
very
now,
true.
Yeah, and now you're taking that and you're taking it to, okay, let's take it to the workplace. And a lot of your bigger companies do have your veteran, employee resource groups, ERGs. So your big companies have veterans that are consistently looking. They recognize, because they have the experience directly, hey, I definitely know because people in my unit back in the day had the leadership skills that were basically what we're looking for at XYZ company, and they can find better ways to try to recruit them to their company because they'll bring long-term value. But it's getting better. It's not perfect yet, but we're getting
That's right. I mean, you kind of have to look at the positive and
Absolutely.
the
Absolutely.
improvements, and that everybody's asked for. And I mean, it's slow, but it's happening.
Sure.
So where are you at today since you've been out of the military? What have you done?
Well, I've been having a marketing background since even before I went in the military. Marketing, kind of management, project management is kind of where I've taken a lot of my attention on the civilian sector, so to speak. So I did that, and I've a small business run pretty lean. Helping out and any organization, especially small, medium size, medium plus growing organizations in marketing, try and take their traditional tools, presence, branding, whatever, and transitioning and injecting some digital, trying to make sure it's a good blend for their specific circumstance, to be competitive in this these ever changing environments. So I do that. I found a lot of times I've worked with health and wellness brands. I've worked with nonprofits, professional services, as well, as some of the major sectors that I've had the good fortune to work with. But outside of that, in my spare time, which is really it's not the spare time, I found the passion to serve when you're in uniform. It's there. Usually it's there. I mean, on rare occasions, so it's there, and I've taken that and continued that desire to serve. And like I said, I didn't go back to Fallujah, and while that was out of my control, I feel bad. When I've stopped something or made, I don't have that demon per se that I battle, but it hurts me inside that I wasn't there, in that sense. And I miss the military. So now, over the past handful of years, and especially after COVID, I've really elevated my time and attention to serving other veterans, primarily through the Veterans of Foreign Wars. I've been very fortunate to have numerous opportunities at various levels. The VFW has local level, which is a post, and then they have the district, the state levels, or is considered department, and there's national, which is really international because we have posts in Europe and also in Pacific areas. So I've had the good fortune of kind of taking the tools that I've had built or improved over the years, or maybe been blessed with by God early on, and being able to help other veterans throughout that avenue. So right now, I just got done in June. I came off the podium, as they call it, and some people call it podium. I was the post commander for Veterans of Foreign Wars post. We had some really great opportunities to grow in numbers, but also in the community, especially post-COVID, to give back both to the community and especially to our veterans and families.
Right.
So we had that. I was a post commander for 3 years, and we were recognized for numerous achievements, thankfully. I had the honor to be the post commander, All-American and all the great things we were doing. We were recognized as what they call all-state captains. So it's a considered like a top post kind of recognition, friendly competition of sorts to meet some criteria and exceed and excel. And I've had the good fortune to be able to pass that torch on as well, knowing that the team is essentially, we need more. It's not just one person, right?
That's right.
At the same time, I've been for the past, this is my second year now as district commander. So we have the largest district right now of members in the VFW in Georgia. So Northwest Georgia has a growing population of veterans, and we're trying to solve those problems and opportunities and challenges, and how can we help them out? How can we tell the story of the VFW? Because we're 125 years old now, and
Right.
with that comes great strength and great milestones, so we can pat ourselves on the back for a few minutes on, but it also comes with some stigma, right? It has some things that we are looking at, and how, what you might view the VFW to be, it might not be. We're family friendly. We're looking for all ages, and we serve all veterans, but we happen to, because we're congressionally chartered as those who served honorably, and we happen to have that combat experience. We bring that combat experience to the conversation, and ensuring that the benefits are taken care of, never diminished, because we know sometimes Congress forgets about our veterans and
Yes.
the families. Often you could say that our the budget gets balanced on our backs, and you can kind of go a number of different ways there. So we want to make sure we're taking care of our veterans, making sure that legislation, the benefits that, a lot of our amazing leaders have reminded me, and I try to echo it, that, when we put our hand in the air, we swore to defend, this great nation, the best of all that we've ever experienced, and all the freedoms and all that comes with it, that responsibility. We were saying we're going to do so, and we would sacrifice up into our own life, and many have done that, given the ultimate sacrifice, right? Many have given all parts of their body, mind, and spirit, blood, sweat, and tears. And when we go overseas, when I went to boot camp, even at the basic level, I went to boot camp. The recruiter didn't come to me saying, "Hey, sorry, our budget is a little over right now. We can't send you." Right? They if you needed training, you basically got the training, with maybe exception here and there. So we had a blank check. We went overseas. We went to training. We got, people were stationed across the world, and then they get a new station, they have new task, new responsibility.
Right.
All that was done blank check. So when you come back, don't be talking about it's not in the budget, because you sent us all over the world without worrying about the budget. We had to get it done, and their responsibility is to make sure that we're taking care of all veterans. So that's critically important that we never forget that. And if I can help somebody with a resource to make sure that those benefits are everlasting and growing, right? Because we're learning new things all the time, and just making sure the veterans are taken care of. And then outside of the benefits, just the resources. It's important to collaborate and make sure that we have the tools, and some of us just miss the camaraderie, right? Being able to talk the language. I'm sure if I flew, when I was in elementary school, I learned a little bit of French. My French is not good right now, and I haven't, went to learn it again. But if I went to France, I probably would struggle to communicate in some areas, right? If I were to go to Argentina, I would struggle because I don't know the language. Right? There's that language across the table. We have our brothers and sisters that have worn the uniform, and that camaraderie is unique, and it's so often thicker than the blood of brothers and sisters. It goes beyond that. So the VFW, Veterans of Foreign Wars, and VSOs like it enable us to have some of those experiences and have those conversations that we might near and dearly need to continue to survive and thrive as humans. I couldn't hear you, sorry. There.
How about now?
There you go.
Okay.
You're testing me. See that language?
Yeah, my lips were
Okay.
moving. You just couldn't hear anything. So, well, I put it on mute when I was coughing. So
I understand that.
But okay, how do you handle when people comment to you that the VFW, Veteran of Foreign Wars, is an old person or hangout?
You know, I
Do
try
you
to.
have that?
We have, right? And that's where that history, 125 years is great. September 29th, we're going to hit the 125th anniversary of the
Right.
birthday, right? Amazing stuff. We've had seriously achievements, PACT Act, GI Bill, right? There's a long list of achievements, and that was yesterday. And we built the foundation on that, and it helps us today. But it's all about what have you done for us lately? What are you doing now? I think we do have people that maybe when they were a kid, right, a child, they went to a VFW, and that's what they remember it to be. And maybe it was a smoke-filled bar, this, that, everything else. And there's nothing wrong if the post has a bar. My VFW post has a bar, but in my district there happen to be, well, technically 2 bars out of the 9, and there's a 10th VFW that we're working on right now. We have a VFW that has a campground in a lake, and they can fish and hang out with family, and there's no bingo, there's no bar. So they come in different shapes and sizes. The first thing I try to, I know some have had a bad experience. Maybe when they got back home, the Vietnam veteran made sure that when I got back home from Iraq, I did not endure 1% of what they endured, right?
Exactly.
So I'm very thankful and grateful for that. But also, too, we have numerous generations of veterans, and the needs of a veteran like me in my chapter in life might be different than someone who is 80 years old. And it will also be different than someone who just got out of boot camp, who just PCS'd somewhere, just came back off first deployment. Maybe they have their first child, all these different things. And we're not trying to be the jack of all trades, but we understand that every veteran is unique and different and maybe in a different spot in life. So how do we solve that? How do we handle those challenges, right? I try my best to tell the story and understand. I try to listen because we have 2 years for a reason. I try to listen and understand if it was maybe a bad experience when they first got back, maybe they remembered it incorrectly, or maybe it's very possible they walked into the post that's nearest them and it wasn't what they're looking for, what they need, for whatever reason, the personality, whatever it is, right? It's possible. Or they might have just heard the story from somebody else and because they didn't see anything different, that was that.
Right.
It's extremely important that our VFW post, and a lot of them are, they're getting outside the 4 walls of the post itself and getting deep entrenched into the community and being, some of the first people that the community thinks about when they think about those who are giving back and doing the good work, right? So I think we've succeeded in many areas there. It's still an uphill battle, right? Because different areas, different challenges, different needs, trying to solve all the problems we can. But I do know that it's important also to show, and that's part of the showing element. If you're questioning me, and if I can at least persuade you to come with me somewhere, and I can show it to you, that's more powerful than me just giving you, a soup sandwich, so to speak.
Right. Exactly.
Wordsmithing can be great and all, but being able to invite them out to an event, hopefully getting them with somebody that can speak even more in depth dialect, right, language. So if you're Army, I know a little bit about the Army, but I didn't live the Army. I didn't live the Navy. I lived the Marine Corps a little bit. I've lived the reserve life.
Right.
So if you can try to tailor that, the mentorship, but also I think what's really important is we're a service organization, so it has to be a two-way street. And for us, a lot of us, have it has to be a two-way street. So we need the membership to make sure that the megaphone is alive and well, and at the state capitals and at our nation's capital. And we've done a nice job there. But if you look back a couple decades ago, we were in a situation where we had more of our World War II veterans here, and we had Vietnam here. We just had gotten, a Desert Storm, so we had like 2 million, veterans and families or more. So we need to make sure we have the numbers up, but we also need those who are active and young. And when they come to these events, they're having a good time, because that's one thing. You can have the most amount of money in the world. You can have all these other things. You can't replace time. So if we can't give you a good experience, then we'll lose that person to someone else. And so I try when I'm recruiting, because I've been fortunate to have success in recruiting, and they don't always come to my post, right? If I recruit you into my post, I might have a chance to have more ability to mold how that experience is for you. But if I see you in the airport, sign you up, and I send you to a post in, Timbuktu, and I don't know that inner culture, who's there, who's the commander, how's it been going, I can guess maybe if I look up some stats, but that's just numbers on paper. So it's important that I let people know, hey, look, please do me a favor. VFW is going to have different personalities sometimes at the local level, based on who's leading it, because that's we're all people. So if you happen to be at a post and it's not what you're looking for or what you expect for or what you demand for in a world-class, leading organization for combat veterans or veterans in general, please let me know, because I'll be happy to help you find a post that's going to be more amenable to your needs. But we are definitely family friendly. We have the combat tested gaming. Some of our younger veterans find that as a way to express and kind of, I know some people that have endured numerous, IED kind of scenarios where TBI comes into play and some of those other PTS and whatnot. So there are resources out there, and the VFW is a great way to get into that. And I think when we get the collaboration across, and it's not a competition between other VSOs, and I'm happy to work with all. The goal is trying to get the localized resources in conjunction with those that are up above, so that they're thinking, wow, VFW helped me get my claim and it didn't cost me anything. Wow, VFW has this gaming league, or VFW pointed me down the road here because this one doctor, really has good experience with veterans, and he's a family physician. And because the VFW is very active in this local area, they happen to know that, or these are the businesses, or hey, I'm a new business owner, and my VFWs help me get the word out to serve other veterans and make a living. So,
Yep.
No, it has to be a two-way street for sure. It can't just be a, hey, pay me, whatever the membership fee is, and we'd love to have you come around, spend some money, but that's it. That's not the acceptable practice in a world-class organization like the VFW.
Exactly. So I am an auxiliary member at large
Fantastic.
for the VFW. And so for anybody watching this, I can say that if you have immediate family,
Sure.
I believe, is it immediate family or just family in
Right.
general?
Yes.
Okay, that is
There's like, so basically think of it this way, and it's part of it's dealing because we're a congressionally chartered nonprofit, and without being the expert in IRS tax code, that's not the case, but we're afforded the ability to look at our family members. When I went overseas, life didn't stop back home, right? So a spouse, parent. So essentially, there's a wheel. They have a nice, amazing sheet. The auxiliary does, but think of it. I like to think of it in the simple terms. If the combat veterans in the middle here, right here, in the middle, you go up two, down two, left and right. So think of it this way. So if you have a combat veteran, and that combat veteran doesn't have to be a member of the VFW, didn't have to be a member, but that combat veteran is eligible to be a member of the VFW.
correct.
So that person who's eligible for the Veterans of Foreign Wars can now afford additional opportunities for those family members, right? Family members need to be able to congregate and have those conversations too. I mean,
Yes.
some of these combat veterans and all veterans in general, we can be hard-headed, right? And
No way.
I know the family members are like, look, I had to talk to my son or my spouse, whatever, right? My daughter, they just would never file for this, whatever. And it's, I kept talking about doing claims and they need to do a few things and they're hard-headed, whatever it is, right? It's relatability there. So there's a language the family speaks, and often the family gets forgotten about. Or what if someone, paid the ultimate sacrifice? Early on, just like anything else, we as citizens of the United States, we think about the person who passed away, especially if they provided that ultimate sacrifice. But over time, life happens. It takes over. It does all these things. Then what? Right?
Right.
And then life is past us, and that Gold Star family's maybe forgotten about, right? But we're not taking care of them as a nation. So that's where the VFW, Veterans of Foreign Wars, those Gold Star family members would be eligible to be auxiliary members. So again, that language, that support for the families, and pushing. And I'll tell you what, my auxiliary at my post, if we didn't have them, while we'd be successful, we would not be as successful anywhere near being able to achieve because that drive to be patriotic and be pro veteran, supporting the veterans in any which way possible. They pour hours of time, and at the local level, that's really critical. Makes our job a lot easier if we have more people jumping in.
Right.
So the auxiliary, like you said, going back to it, it is spouses. So husband, wife. It would be brother,
Children.
sister. It'd be parents, grandparents, children, grandchildren. The caveat being of the age of 16 years and older. So if you're 16 and older, and it doesn't matter, it can be adopted, it could be half, it could be step, it could be, as long as there's an actual connection at that level. Unfortunately, cousins don't qualify. Otherwise, I would have a bunch of cousins in right now. But I have family that my mom, she was actually more involved in the VFW mission before I got involved, and she's amazing, and she continues to do that to this day. So definitely, while the auxiliary is indeed, again, an auxiliary component of the organization, collectively we do the overall mission and take care of veterans and families. So yeah, you can join at large. If you're near one locally that has either the auxiliary at the VFW or the VFW as a whole, I would encourage to get involved at the local level at the post if it's in your community. But at large, you can be a member at large. You can put in, very little time, or you can spend all the volunteer hours you wish.
Exactly.
You don't get turned away.
we actually, through this channel,
Okay.
I met somebody who also was a local commander.
Yes. Okay.
Great personality, great individual. And he actually, of course, introduced us, brought us into the VA. They were kind of having an open house. They were redoing a building that was kind of donated, if you will. And so I got to talk about the channel, what it is, what it was for, to the veterans that were there. And then, of course, told them, I have 2 Marine sons, and one was deployed overseas. So, anyway, but I also had a great grandfather and a great grandfather that, so Brigadier General Torney.
Okay.
And Brigadier General Ord, as in Fort Ord.
Gotcha.
So, but of course, so anyway, so we do have that, but it's going back to the fact of when you file an application, you have to have the documentation to back it up. So that's the hard part, right? I could have utilized that, but I don't have DD 214 information,
Sure.
any of that. So I actually had to wait until my son did get out and provided me with that information from his DD 214, because they do want a list of, what campaigns and such were they in. So just for anybody watching, just know that that is something that you can do. And if you're if you're part of a good VFW, you're going to know immediately. They're going to be involved in your community. They're going to be posting stuff that's happening throughout all the time, right? We're doing this on this day. We're doing this ruck march here. We're having a benefit for so-and-so here. Just, you'll know it. And those are the communities you want to be a part of, in my opinion, of course. And this is just my opinion.
And I'll add that to it as well. You're right. So, partnering with other organizations, having those other family members and the combat veterans, everyone all involved, you're seeing them out there, right? I do think the unique thing is that if you come across a post that's maybe not what you want it to be, and hopefully you can communicate with somebody at that post that maybe it's like that. Oh, we've always done it this way. Okay, I get that. Maybe we need to
Yes.
adjust and add some additional things, right? We're not here to just change it up for the sake of changing it up, but also we know that our veterans evolve just like everyone else does, right?
Correct.
Things
The
change.
generations are changing.
Absolutely.
And
the
you're
needs differ.
yes.
On combat levels and training levels, what you might have went through back in the 50s and 60s might not be something that you're going to endure today, but then vice versa. There's things that in the 50s and 60s they didn't have to endure that we do today. So it goes back and forth, having that open dialogue. And hopefully, even if they're kind of, if you walk in, you have a feeling that's kind of dated, it might just be that they don't have a lot of young people who've jumped in there. That first, there has to be one person to the door before there's a dozen. So you might be that person. And if you have a passion for it, and we are membership driven, so we don't have this board of directors that just makes oddball decisions just for the sake of doing it. The membership votes, so long as it's within the constructs of our mission, our congressional charter, as long as we're doing the work for veterans and families in the community, fostering patriotism, taking care of the orphans, the widows, surviving spouses, orphans, as long as we're doing that, we're good. And that post might just need somebody. You might have walked in that post purely, divine intervention there, and now you're going to be the fresh breath of air that helps the next generation of veterans in that community. So you can either, if it's not what you're looking for, you can go find, there are 5,600 posts plus around the globe. Not
And
all of them
sometimes
have,
there's multiple in a city.
exactly, a county, a city.
Yep.
You're going to have some that in the rural areas might be a little further apart, but as you
Right.
get closer to more populated areas, you're going to see more typically as well. But and not all of them will have an auxiliary. But if they don't, you can, if you're a family member, you could, maybe see if they'd be interested in that and start one up with their blessing. And then secondarily, if it's not what you're thinking or looking for at this point in life, there are other posts you could check out. And I would encourage you to check out, a couple posts so you can get a feel for a couple different ones. So you don't have that one black eye first experience, right? That could be that one post out of 1,000 that just happened to be bad that month or whatever. So I encourage you to invest a little bit of time just to check out a few, and if you still want to be in that one in that community, and it's not what you want, be that change, be that one that takes the helm, works with the others, old and new, young and old, to give back to the veterans and provide maybe that new perspective that today's veterans might be needing, that maybe that community just didn't know about, right? Knowledge is power.
Right.
Help them out.
Exactly right. I think that's great information. So, so you are still doing your marketing?
Yes.
Okay. So that's a thriving business, or?
Pretty good, yes. I mean, obviously, right now it's unique in that the economy is always ebb and flow. It's changing, and I do some project work here and there. I will say, as I get more heavily involved in the VFW, the Veterans of Foreign Wars, I strive to be able to have that flexibility, to be able to continue that push. So I want to remain within my brand, marketing brand, Killer Concepts, and also trying to I especially love to help out, like, veteran-owned businesses and pro-veteran businesses and businesses and industries that I'm very familiar with, supporters of veterans, because if they thrive, then other veterans thrive as well. But that also affords me some more opportunities to continue to serve in ways that are more flexible. So as I get more heavily involved at the department level, the state level, as a district commander, and also doing marketing and outreach with the department, because that also is part of the not the problem, but the challenge for some of these more historical, larger organizations.
Right.
Are we really accurately and fully telling that story to inspire that next generation to know the truth of what we do and some of the great things, and that's important. So I've been able to have some opportunities, and we'll have some more in the future that kind of help tell that story, help to ensure that the VFWs locally and regionally and across the states and whatever, if they're doing the good work, let's make sure that a lot of times if you didn't take a picture and put it on Facebook, it didn't happen. Sometimes that's been the thing. It's not just Facebook though, but trying to find better ways to communicate with our veterans. I'm fortunate to also sit as one of the board members of the CVEB. There are 3 CVEBs, Community Veterans Engagement Boards, directed by or assigned essentially by the VA in Georgia. One being Georgia Veterans Network. So bringing a little bit of that marketing communication there, pulling in some of the resources they have and some of the access we have there, plus the access I have historically, with the VFW, and trying to make sure that we're having great communication, or at least improved communication, from VSO to VSO and whatever else. That communication element is really important too. And we have some new technologies that allow us to do that better. But we're not just going to email blast everybody either, right? That face-to-face, that phone call, the buddy check is important.
It is.
So,
it really is.
trying to find that blend, and find best practices that make sense so we can be more successful collectively is important. And I think that allows me to use these tools that I've brought and learned over the years. While marketing is not a science like math is. 2 + 2 is always, basically is always 4. Yeah.
I don't know that Common Core math. Common Core, it could be 6. I have no idea.
Imaginary numbers and stuff from
That's right.
Whatever else, but no, for the most part, every time there's a system with science on the math, for example. But marketing is, again, you do something and then maybe your competitor's doing something different, or the tools that are used by your audience change and the behaviors change. So trying to keep in close proximity to our audience members. And like I said, that story thing too, is that we have brands that maybe don't know that correct story of the VFW, and they want to partner to help veterans out, and they don't know how to do that. And the VFW might be exactly what they're looking for, but they don't know that. So we're trying to better inform the veterans, the family members, potential partners, sponsors, the community at large. Right? It's our job to make sure they know the story too. So
that's excellent. So I'm going to put out to the chats, if anybody out there has any questions for Dwayne, go ahead and put those in the chats now, and we will get him to answer those. My question to you would be, what advice do you have, or would you have, for any young individual considering joining the military?
Well, first advice, Marine Corps.
Hoorah.
Yeah, right. I am a little biased there, but no, I know it's tough sometimes, and whether politics aside, I think too often, life is at a warp speed today, and I like to consider myself young most of the time. We do get fixated on that short term, goal, or we think about it's long term, but it's really shorter term. It's right there. You want that quick satisfaction. Military will give you a quick satisfaction if you play it right, but I think the tools that it can build upon are tough to get anywhere else. So, and you're getting paid to do it, and you can still do college, you can still do all these other things. I would highly encourage you to if you want to serve, if service is something that you would like to do in some capacity, at least go to the recruiters. Check all the branches out, check all the different opportunities. If you kind of have an idea what you might want to do in the civilian sector later on, what would that be? Those are things that you could, I would at least have the conversation. And also in your area, if you're looking to go to Army, Air Force, whatever, maybe try to find someone in uniform that's been in there 4 years, and maybe someone who's been in there 20 years, right?
I think that's good advice
Yeah.
right there.
That way, because you need that perspective, you need more than one story. I could tell you it's great and amazing, and it worked for me. You don't know if it's going to work for you yet, but I think it's worth at least looking at.
Yes, exactly. So I'm not seeing any comments here, any questions for you. So that's not a bad thing. Means we get to get you out of here a little bit earlier. I do want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for taking time out of your busy schedule to come on, share your story, and have that conversation about the military and what you went through, as an individual, right? How you saw it. Because you could have two individuals side by side in any kind of situation, and they will have different stories.
Absolutely.
So, and it's important to make sure that those stories are heard too. And I have said from day one, whether you are reserve, whether you are non-combat, administrative, you are still serving. You have still volunteered. And in fact, what is it? Around 18% only are combat?
Oh, yeah, I want to
Give
say
or
that's
take?
about right. Because in Georgia, there's about 700,000 veterans, according to whatever their equation is
Right.
to calculate. You're looking at maybe less than 200,000 have had the experience. And at the end of the day, it's not the individual veteran or service member's fault. 99.9% of the time, the unit gets assigned and the mission goes on. It takes a whole team to do it. So some have seen numerous combat tours. Some saw 10 days of combat, and it was the worst 10 days of their life. So you get a variety across all gamuts there for sure.
Correct. So Jason says, thank you for your service and thank you for your time. And I echo that as well. So if you will just hang tight for me, I'm going to go ahead. We're going to sign off for this evening. Remember, we will have another show coming up next Sunday, 6 p.m. Central Time. I encourage everybody to be there. Bring your friends along, bring your family along. Quite an interesting topic. So hopefully everybody can join. And when this ends, please be sure to comment and hit that thumbs up. So, all right, everybody, thank you for joining tonight, and we will see you next week.